In round 8 of the World Team Championship, Russia faced off against Sweden. Russia are the current leaders of this event. Their main rivals are England, who are facing China. China also have a pretty strong team. If Russia beats Sweden and if China manages to defeat England, then the Russians will win the event with a round to spare. So let's take a look at one of the games between Russia and Sweden. In this game, Grischuk is playing against Hans Tikkanen. On paper, Grischuk is much higher rated, but let's see how this game went. Grischuk had the white pieces, and we have a French defense, Winawer variation. So we are still in well-known opening theory. King f8 played by Tikkanen to defend g7. So the main move here for white is knight to f3. But Grischuk plays h4. This line was famously played by Caruana against Lenderman in the 2018 US Championship, where Caruana managed to win in just 23 moves. So what's the purpose behind this move? Well, white can obviously continue to gain space with h5 and h6. There's also the idea of a rook lift. The rook can also sometimes come to the h4 square, just to give some extra protection to the d4 pawn. So Tikkanen played knight c6. We're still following the game between Caruana and Lenderman. In this position, Lenderman played h6 against Caruana, stopping white's kingside expansion. In the game, Tikkanen played queen takes c2. Very brave move from Tikkanen, just grabbing the pawn. So Grischuk met that with rook c1 and queen e4 check from Tikkanen. So if black played queen to a4, white continues with h6, and then knight f3 with ideas of knight g5 and queen f4, looking at f7, and this is rather promising for white. So here queen e4 check, black is forced to compromise his structure. And Tikkanen played f5, trying to hang on to that extra pawn. But Grischuk responds very actively. g4, just preparing to take and create a passed pawn of his own. So Tikkanen defends f5. E takes f5 is possible, but again it does allow white to have potentially two dangerous passers. White can now go knight to f4, trying to stop knight d5 with the idea of playing bishop e3 to secure the center. And this is going to be an excellent position for white. So this would most likely provoke black into playing pawn takes. So now white can play rook c7 with ideas like bishop b4, pinning the knight. White is down 2 pawns, but he definitely has compensation here. So knight to f3 check, trying to simplify, doesn't make things any easier for black. White still has this bishop coming most likely to c4. This rook is going to come to g1 to put more pressure on g7. Black, on the other hand, can't develop his light square bishop, meaning that the rooks are, for the moment, they're not doing anything in this game. So Tikkanen played knight takes f5, which looks ugly, but this was done for a good reason. Bishop g2. If black decides to get greedy and take the pawn, here white again goes rook c7, and this is quite unpleasant. So h6 was played. Obviously concerned about white pushing h6, but this does create a hole on g6. This could come back to haunt black. So instead, Tikkanen could have tried bishop to d7, and play king f7, trying to get his pieces involved. But instead we see h6. Bishop takes e4, material is now even, but white has the two bishops. Excellent central control, while black is behind in development. Grischuk also has this option of bishop takes f5, creating a passed pawn, which could come in handy. Now we see king to f7, rook g1, rook d8. So black naturally tries to put more pressure on white's center, since this is one of Grischuk's trump cards. So Grischuk proceeds to grow his advantage. He now plays bishop takes f5, creating a passed pawn, and bishop e3, just protecting the strong center. Bishop e6, knight f4, threatening to take, and then playing rook takes g7. So bishop c4, and now e6 check from Grischuk, forcing the king back. So this can be taken, but this will allow rook takes g7, where h6 is about to drop, b7 is under attack, and black's king is pretty exposed. This seems good for white. So Tikkanen played king g8, and now f3 from Grischuk. A nice little move, preparing to shelter the king on f2 and connect the rooks. There also could be some ideas of doubling on the g file. So at the moment d5 can't really, e6 can't really be hit with the move rook e8, because white can go d5, protecting the pawn. Tikkanen now played king to h7, perhaps unnecessary. Maybe it was better to just bring the rook into the game. But we have king h7, king to f2, now rook a to c8. So how does white continue here? It's a bit difficult to try and push d5. Black can also drop the knight back to e7 if necessary, just to cover that square. So Grischuk played d takes c5, with the idea of sticking the bishop on the d4 square, where it would attack g7. Tikkanen responded, rook c7, that defends both g7 and b7, which are both weaknesses for black. Now white can very well continue with the plan of bishop d4. So the idea is most likely to just double rooks, say rook g6, throw in a king e3, just to protect the bishop, and the other rook can swing in over to g1. So the logical reply would be knight takes, and now with black retreats the bishop, king e3 is very comfortable for white, and these pawns are unstoppable. If rook takes d4, king to e3 wins the exchange. Obviously there is still work to do, but white is better. So bishop d4 is very reasonable, but Grischuk decides on rook c to d1, which is also very effective. And now rook d6, the rook comes in to defend. We have rook c to e7 with a triple attack on e6, but bishop d4 stopping any captures on e6 because of the threat on g7. A lot of pressure on black's position. For example, For example, if black tries knight to d8, piling up on the pawn, then knight g6, and if that is taken, knight f8 check. Let me just play through this line. It's not pretty for black. And this is going to be mate. So not an easy position for black. Tikkanen tried knight takes d4. Bishop takes e6. but Grischuk plays knight to g6. Without this move, black would still be in the game. So now bishop f7 from Tikkanen. If he would have played rook f7, then white goes rook to e1, pinning the bishop. There's a double attack. And if bishop d7, rook takes d7 is a neat tactic. And if rook takes e1, white doesn't even need to capture on f7 instead. Rook d8 and no defense for rook to h8. And if rook f6 defending, then just exchange everything. And knight f8 wins. So bishop f7 from Tikkanen, we have knight takes e7, winning the exchange. And rook e1. Now this is just a matter of technique for Grischuk. We have bishop takes, rook takes, bishop e8, rook f8, bishop b5, f4, and Tikkanen drew in the towel. Russia managed to overpower Sweden and win the World Team Championship with a round to spare. This was made possible because their main rivals, England, lost their matchup against China. So that is all for this video. I hope you enjoyed the game. Thanks for watching and have a great day.